All right, and welcome to the battle. Daniel Levy of BestFightPicks.com and Go Paolo of Sportsnet.ca. Daniel, how's it going?
It's going amazing, man. I mean, Bader versus Rumble's about to happen. Is Bader going to survive the first round?
Yeah, that's the question we'll get to later on in the show. Honestly, that the whole 5 round fight revolves around that question. Paulo, how are you?
Pretty good. Excited to be back for before the battle after 1 week, after 1 whole week without UFC, obviously. So glad to be back with my boys Daniel and Nick. How are you guys?
Absolutely, not too bad. Yeah, last time we talked, it was pre-Dillashaw versus Cruz. That headlined UFC Fight Night 81 and was an amazing fight to say the least. Dominic Cruz, I called it right here, right now, or actually right then, or whatever. I don't even know what I'm saying. Jesus Christ. But yeah, I called the Dominic Cruz win. He won a split decision. Some people scored it for Dillashaw. Watching it live, I was pretty confident Cruz was going to get the nod. I couldn't believe it was a split. Watching it back, I can definitely understand a TJ Dillashaw victory. Daniel, how did you score that fight?
I mean, it all comes down to how you scored the first 3 rounds because the championship rounds were clearly for Dillashaw. So I thought that one round where Cruz took him down a couple times, that round you definitely score for Cruz. But the other 2 rounds, man, I don't know. It could have gone either way. I'm not going to complain about the decision at all. But if TJ would have got his hand raised, I wouldn't be complaining about that either. I thought it was a very good fight between two high-level competitors, and I bet you they're going to do a rematch soon.
Paulo, what were your thoughts on the overall fight? Already an early Fight of the Year candidate, but of course Lawler Condit just a week before that, or a couple weeks before that. It'll be tough to beat that. And how did you score the fight?
When I first saw it, I thought Dillashaw won because I thought he finished strong. And usually, like when these close fights go, the winner of the round 5 usually takes it. You can ask Robbie Lawler all about that. But nah, man, when Cruz won, I was so happy. I didn't agree with the decision when I first saw it, but man, it's a close fight. Definitely not a robbery. And actually, TJ had an interesting point when he was interviewing with Ariel Helwani, saying that Tony Weeks was the only judge to to give Dominic Cruz rounds 4 and 5, and he's thinking that maybe Tony Weeks confused him and Dominic Cruz. And man, I don't mind that at all because, I mean, I don't think that's crazy at all because most people I know gave Dillashaw the last 2 rounds but gave the first 3 to Cruz. So, I mean, who knows? It's a close fight. We're going to have a rematch, like Daniel said, and pretty stoked about that.
Like I said, I scored it for Cruz. I actually scored it 4-1 for him, only giving TJ the 4th round, which was pretty clear for Dillashaw, but I could definitely understand a 3-2 score for Cruz. Really, anyway, I guess. But it definitely was a close fight. I really enjoyed this fight. On first watch, I know a lot of people disagree with me here, but I actually enjoyed it more as a 25-minute fight than Lawler Condit. Lawler Condit, the 5th round was better than any of the Dillashaw Cruz rounds, but as a fight, I felt as a fight it was just a bit more exciting, and it was really surprising to see Dillashaw not really landing, especially early on, and Cruz's movement and the ACL injuries not really affecting his movement, everything like that. It was definitely a spectacular outing for the new champion. Before we get to UFC on Fox 18, which goes down this weekend from Newark, New Jersey, let's quickly talk about some big news that broke this past week. Fabricio Verdum versus Cain Velasquez, the rematch was supposed to go down early next month, headlining UFC 196. It is no more. Couple days ago, Cain got hurt, and we were looking at a Fabricio Verdum versus Stipe Miocic matchup. And the next day, Fabricio gets hurt, and we really didn't know what was going to happen, whether it would be an interim title fight, which would have been a stupid call, whether they canceled the event, changed it to Fox Sports 1. For the first time in quite some time, for the first time in a while, I really do feel the UFC made the right move by scrapping that fight, taking Stipe off the card, and making Hendricks Wonderboy the main event on Fox Sports 1. First things first, though, Daniel, how disappointed were you that Cain Verdum was scrapped?
I mean, it is what it is, man. I mean, it's not like it's gonna prevent me from watching the event. You know, I'm still gonna watch, man. And you know, I see all these people talking about how, oh, it's not called UFC 196 anymore, and this and that, and I'm like, dude, if there's a fight on, let me know. And you know, everyone else can worry about the name and this and that, but I just want to see fights. I want to see two grown men go inside the UFC's octagon and throw down. So. Yeah, I don't care about any of this other stuff, man. And we'll see what happens, you know, with Fabricio and Kane. It's kind of embarrassing how Kane is always injured. I mean, he never fights. He never shows up to work, man. And it's like Dana White said about AKA. They're training in the Stone Ages, man. I mean, Khabib's always injured. Like, what's going on over there, Nick? Do you guys know what's going on at AKA?
Yeah, it's really tough to say. Dana White every day is looking to be even more right than he once was. Whether it's AKA or just Cain Velasquez, I don't know at this point, but I'm leaning.
Khabib.
Yeah, Khabib too. It's tough to say whether it's their training or whether they just coincidentally pick up injury-prone fighters like Dominic Cruz. Head over to AKA right now. Actually, don't, because we don't want you to get hurt. That would be really awful. But like we kind of mentioned, like you said, I don't care that the name is different. Fight Night 82 or UFC 196, it's all the same fights. We're getting Hendricks Wonderboy as the main event. I don't care what it's called. People are talking about it so much on social media today when the news was broke that it was going to be switched names. It's like, why should we care? It's all the same fights. And we probably shouldn't even be talking about this. It's not even worth our time and everything like that. But Paul, what were your thoughts when you heard Kane got hurt? Probably the least surprising injury ever.
Yeah, well, obviously I'm disappointed because the fight was, so close. I mean, if idealistically if it could have happened, it could have happened like some time ago, maybe a month earlier, so there was more ample time to prepare. The only thing that's fishier than that is Fabricio Verdum suddenly says, "Oh yeah, guys, I'm injured." Like what? Like literally a day after accepting a fight with Stipe Miocic. I mean, come on, man, seriously. I mean, the way I'm thinking, it's not coincidental that he suddenly got injured. I think he's always been injured, and he was just gonna push through it to fight because he didn't want to drop out at the last moment. But now that he knows that, oh, there's a completely new guy, different fighter. I mean, I have to redo my training methods and stuff like that, then no, maybe I can't go through with a back injury. But who knows, man? That's speculation. But, at this point, like Daniel said, we still got fights, man. I mean, if this would have happened before, who knows? Maybe the UFC would have canceled this like they did with UFC 151 and UFC 176, but they didn't. So now you get to see Wonder Boy and Johnny Hendricks for free. So that's a blessing in disguise.
And Verdum even said that if Kane hadn't pulled out, he would have fought through with the injury. But then when Stipe filled in, that was when he pulled out, which I can understand people saying, oh, this guy is scared. But by no means the heavyweight champion is scared of anyone, whether that be Stipe Miocic or Junior Dos Santos or Kane or Overeem or whoever. The heavyweight champion, the baddest man on the planet, is not scared of anyone that signs the dotted line to fight him. So it's pretty... I don't get why people are saying he's scared, first off, but I do understand he does have the right to decline a fight. I do understand why he did, because Stipe Miocic had a good chance of beating Verdum, and Verdum was hurt, first off, and I don't want to see fighters fight injured as much as we probably do without knowing it. I don't want to see it because we're not seeing the best fighter we can, whether that be whoever, Khabib or Kane or whoever. But yeah, it's tough to say, but I can understand why Verdum pulled out after Kane pulled out, because it is a different matchup.
Yeah, at the end of the day, man, it's their careers. I mean, who's you to say that? Oh yeah, you should just fight. I mean, are you their manager or something? It's not your money or your title that's on the line, man. Give me a break, man. I mean, scared crap right there. You'll be a professional fighter, then you can talk.
Exactly. Exactly.
Nick, you know what Hon Ju Kao likes to say? He's from ATL. He likes to say, haters hate and fighters fight. So let's just leave it at that, guys.
Yeah.
Absolutely. With that, let's move on to this weekend's Okay, Fox, big Fox card. Good matchups. Maybe not the same type of name power we've been used to for the past couple months, but it still will be a fun card. UFC on Fox 18, headlined by a pivotal light heavyweight matchup between Anthony Rumble Johnson and Ryan Darth Bader. We'll get to that closer to the end of the show. Let's start off on the Fight Pass prelims with Matt Dwyer taking on newcomer Randy Brown. Randy Brown, he's getting a little bit of hype coming into his matchup. He was on Dana White's Looking for a Fight. Dana White handpicked him at an event, said, "We want you in the UFC." Shortly after that event, he was signed to fight Matt Dwyer, the Canadian from BC. Interesting matchup. I don't know a whole lot about Randy Brown. I know most of or all of his tape you have to pay for, which is kind of strange on a website. Which I know, Daniel, you know a bit more about that. But as far as the matchup, Daniel, who do you like in this one?
It's an interesting matchup because, Randy Brown, he is hyped up to be a very good striker, but the level of competition he's faced is nowhere near the level of competition that Matt Dwyer's faced. But that doesn't mean that Randy Brown can't win this fight. It's been proven that if you can close that distance on Matt Dwyer, you can knock this guy out. But at the same token, he is very experienced. He has fought in the UFC 3 times against some very good opposition. I mean, Alan Juban, Albert Tumenov, those guys aren't no joke. So, he got that win over Macario. I think he was the only guy to knock him out. I know Neil Magny TKO'd him in the 3rd round, but Dwyer legit knocked him out. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what goes down. I'm going to go with Randy Brown because I think that Dana White knows what he's doing when he's scouting this talent. But if Dwyer showed his experience, I wouldn't be too surprised.
Absolutely. Now, Paulo, are you going to go with our fellow Canadian in Matt Dwyer fighting a Toshido in BC, or are you going to go with the newcomer from Looking for a Fight, Randy Brown?
I'm going to go with Randy Brown. I mean, I haven't really seen a lot from this guy, so it's a little bit tough to say that. But one thing I know about Matt Dwyer, like Daniel mentioned, is that this guy is very hittable, despite the fact that he's got a big reach and he's a really big guy. And Randy Brown has experience fighting big fighters. I mean, for his first pro fight, he fought a guy who was 6'5", or close to it. So it's not like this is the first time he's going to be fighting like a behemoth. So he's already got that experience. Plus, he's really athletic and explosive and fast. And I mean, I think he's more explosive and quicker than Alan Jouban is. And Alan Jouban lit up Matt Dwyer. So, I mean, MMA math doesn't always work, but I think Randy Brown's going to go to work on Matt Dwyer and probably finish him in the 2nd round.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know a whole lot about Randy Brown. I haven't seen a single fight of his, but like Daniel pointed out, Dana White, as much as some people dislike him or disagree with him at times, he does know what he's doing when he is scouting new talent. Obviously, Sage Northcutt was his first pick ever on Looking for a Fight, and he's already 2-0 in the UFC. We'll get to him in a little bit, of course. He's also on this card, on the main card, but Dana does know what he's doing. He picked Randy Brown for a reason. Basically, what I know, he's a good striker. This could be a stand-up war, honestly. People really underrate Matt Dwyer, but in this matchup, I do favor Randy Brown. You probably shouldn't bet Randy Brown just because I'm saying that, because, like I said, I don't know a whole lot about Randy Brown. I just don't think Matt Dwyer is the best of the best. I was even talking with a Jeremy Brandt who knows his stuff. He lives in BC, knows a lot of the local talent, and he even told me that Matt Dwyer is a very good fighter. He's a talented fighter. But there are better BC prospects out there that aren't even in the UFC than Matt. I'm going to take his word for it. Although I do like Matt Dwyer, I hope the fellow Canadian pulls it off. I think Randy Brown will get the victory in this matchup. All right, moving on, we have a featherweight fight between Alex Caceres and Mazio Fullen. Paolo, who do you like in this one?
I like Alex Caceres here. I think he's the better, more well-rounded fighter, and the X factor is that he's moving back up to 145. I mean, he never really had a good chin. I mean, he's one of those battle-worn fighters who's older in fight years than their actual years, and so yeah, it's a good thing he's moving back up to 145. Maybe that re-energizes him as a fighter. But I mean, that chin is just so scary, and the fact that he's almost a 3-1 favorite. Can't bet that, man. I can't even put him as part of a parlay leg, but I think his biggest advantage is his jiu-jitsu. I think he can totally sub Masio Fullen so long as he avoids getting hit, which he does have a habit of getting hit. So there's a chance Masio Fullen wins, but I'm not going to bet on that.
It's a close one for sure. Daniel, who do you like, Alex Caceres or Masio Fullen?
Well, Alex Caceres is a -300 favorite on a 3-fight losing streak with a 10-8 pro record.
You don't see that.
So I'm going to go with the underdog, the guy that's training with Dominic Cruz on a daily basis, the guy that has to be improving, because one doesn't simply train under Dominic Cruz and not improve. So I'm going to go with the underdog here, and I think he's going to pull this off and get the biggest win of his career.
Yeah, it's a close one for sure. Alex Caceres, like you mentioned, is riding a 3-fight winning streak to Kane-Hara, to Faber, to and of course Cisco Rivera, 2 stoppage wins and a kind of clear decision or stoppage losses and a decision loss, of course. Masio Fullen, though, really hasn't done anything too impressive for me anyways. At UFC 184 in his debut back in February of last year, he took home a split win over Alex Torres, not too impressive, and then he got subbed by Makwan Amirkhani in the first round. Alex Caceres moving up to featherweight, I think the move will be better for him, especially with the IV ban in place, everything like that. The weight cut would probably have been pretty tough for him. Even with IVs, I think it was probably a pretty tough cut. He's a big bantamweight and even a fairly large featherweight, to say the least. I like Alex Caceres here, but by no means he should be a 3-1 favorite or whatever he is. He's riding a 3-fight winning streak. That's all you have to say. Even though Masio Fullen really hasn't been too impressive, you never know what Alex's mindset is like coming off a huge losing streak. He can lose this fight. I would not be shocked if he does, but I do like him here as a large favorite, but it definitely should. The odds should be a lot closer. I could see Masio Fullen pulling it off. All right, moving on, we have a welterweight fight between George Sullivan and Alexander Yakovlev. Daniel, who do you like in this 170-pound matchup?
It's interesting because Yakovlev's last fight, he fought at 155 pounds, but I think he probably moved back up because of the IV ban, and he didn't have too good of results his first couple fights in the UFC at 170 pounds, but he was fighting better guys than George Sullivan. And I mean, Yakovlev actually beat Paul Daly outside of the UFC, so this guy's no slouch at all. And in terms of this matchup, I do think Sullivan's going to be the bigger, stronger guy, but Yakovlev's the more skilled guy, and that's probably going to get him the decision here. So, yeah, I'm going to go with the Russian, but regardless, I do think it's going to go the full 3-round distance. So that probably means someone's getting knocked out in the first round.
Paolo, who do you like in this one, George Sullivan or Alexander Yakovlev? And like Daniel said, will it go 3 rounds or will it be a first-round knockout?
I made one of those bets where you take it back right when you saw it, but I bet the over on this fight, and I'm thinking because the way I see it, George Sullivan, this guy has finishing power, but Yakovlev's one of these really tough Eastern European dudes. So I'm like, well, Sullivan's not gonna knock him out because he's really fucking tough. And Damon Maia couldn't submit him, so I don't think George Sullivan's gonna submit him. I mean, he couldn't submit Dominic. Was it Dominic Waters or Dominic Steele? I keep confusing.
Waters, I think.
Yeah, Dominic Waters. Yeah, sorry, because they both debuted at the same time, and they're both Dominics. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, mess me up.
They should fight each other.
Yeah, fight each other for their UFC jobs. No, who I got here, man? I don't know. You want me to flip a coin right now? Because this is how confused I am.
Flip a coin.
Okay, fine.
Here. I'll flip one for you. Let's see.
All right, cool. If it's heads, I'll go with Alexander Yakovlev because I lean him. If it's tails, let's go with the underdog.
You're going Yakovlev. It's heads.
Okay, cool. Let's go with a slight underdog. I mean, a slight favorite here.
Okay, well, I'll disagree with my coin flip here. I'm liking George Sullivan here, but I can't be confident either way because, to be quite honest, they're just really not that good of fighters. Alexander Yakovlev, who did George Sullivan lose to in his last fight? Tim Means. Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was a devastating stoppage, I believe. It's tough to say. Alexander Yakovlev, like you said, he fought at lightweight in his last one. I'm just assuming this is at welterweight. Now that I actually look at the UFC website, of course, Sullivan says 170 and Yakovlev says 155 just because they haven't updated it yet. But I'm gonna assume it's at welterweight. Sullivan probably is the bigger guy for that reason. Um, yeah, it's really tough to say. I like Sullivan here, but I just don't have too much of reason. It's more of a fade on Yakovlev, to be quite honest. In his past little few fights and everything like that, I have not been impressed. Even that win over Gray Maynard, if you don't knock out Gray Maynard at this point, I don't know what to say. You should knock out Gray Maynard in 2015, to say the least, which is disappointing. It's sad, but Gray Maynard's chin is just not there. Yeah, I don't think Alexander Yakovlev gets it done. I like Sullivan here, but it's basically a coin flip. But yeah, anyways, next matchup is a fun one, a lot more fun than that one. A flyweight fight between Dustin Ortiz and Wilson Hayes. Dustin is number 9 and Wilson is number 12 in the 125-pound division. Daniel, who do you like in this one?
It's an interesting matchup because we got a jiu-jitsu guy versus a wrestler, and the times that Wilson Hayes has lost, mostly it's been via knockout, and we haven't seen Dustin Ortiz go out there and knock someone out standing. Obviously, he TKO'd Willie Gates, but that was, via wrestling to ground and pound, and I don't think he's going to wrestling to ground and pound Wilson Hayes. One doesn't simply pass this guy's guard and beat him up on the ground. You got to knock him out standing. So we'll see if that Duke Rufus stand-up has paid off. And I think the youth is going to prevail here. I think Dustin Ortiz is going to find a way to win. He's beat some really good guys in the UFC. Ray Borg, Justin Scoggins. So the youth will prevail, and he'll get a win here.
Paolo, who do you like in Dustin Ortiz versus Wilson Hayes?
I got to go with Dustin Ortiz here, man. I think he's one of the best, toughest grinders in the UFC. Not just the flyweight division, but, in the whole UFC. And the thing about Wilson Hayes is, skill for skill, if that makes sense, I think he's the better grappler here because, this guy has the better takedowns, this guy has better back-taking ability, and it could totally be that he might even submit Dustin Ortiz, even though Joe B couldn't submit Dustin. Not that he tried to, but, he couldn't finish him. Dustin Ortiz is the toughest guy, like I said. I just see him, pushing Wilson Hayes. Maybe he gets into trouble for the first parts, but he's going to break him and probably finish him late or get a typical Dustin Ortiz close decision.
Yeah, I will complete the hat trick here as well. And I know Daniel listened to half the battle yesterday. Only hockey fans and Canadians say that. But yeah, whatever. I'll complete the hat trick. Dustin Ortiz will beat Wilson Hayes here. I like him. I like him here a fair bit. It's kind of like a wrestler versus grappler matchup. I think the wrestler will prevail. Though Dustin Ortiz, I expect a grinding fight, pretty a typical Dustin Ortiz fight. For that matter, he could finish the fight late. I wouldn't be shocked. If I have to pick, though, I like him here by decision. And I should mention, this could be a stylistically, it's definitely an interesting fight. Will it play out like a stand-up war or exciting fight? I'm not really sure, but stylistically, on paper, it is a very interesting fight. And the flyweight division is pretty shallow. The winner of this one, especially if Ortiz wins, could be looking at another top 5 opponent. Of course, his only loss in quite some time was to Joe Benavidez, who's number 1 or number 2 at flyweight. All right, moving on. We have a middleweight matchup between number 15 Rafael Natal and King Kevin Casey. Paulo, are you going with the King here or Rafael Natal?
I made that tweet actually that Kevin Casey is like the king. Actually, I should say the king. The king Kevin Casey is like if you combine Tupac Shakur, John Jones, and Anderson Silva into one guy, and that's what you get. The king Kevin Casey. Maybe add a little bit of BJ Penn in there. Okay, maybe a little bit of joking and exaggeration aside. I'm picking him for one reason here. Rafael Natal doesn't have the best chin, man. And the thing about Rafael Natal, this guy has almost everything you want in a fighter. He's good. He's got great striking, he's got great power, he's got really good wrestling, really good takedowns, surprisingly. but he just never seems to put it all together and win emphatically. You know, I mean, he always gets into this. He always usually wins by decisions, and if he loses, he usually gets knocked out. I mean, I guess Andrew Craig, he was clowning Andrew Craig, and then he ends up getting knocked out because he was getting cocky. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe he gets cocky here and starts clowning Kevin Casey and eats one and gets knocked out.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough one to call. Daniel, are you going with the king here, as the MMA analysis guys like to call him? They bet units, 2 units, 3 units on him right away, or do you think Rafael Natal will win this one?
Well, first of all, there's only one king, and it's not Kevin Casey. But as far as this is concerned, you know, I think Kevin Casey has a good chance to win via DQ because, you know, Rafael Natal, he's a very dirty fighter, as we all know, but Kevin Casey will look for that door. So Natal's going to foul him, and then Kevin Casey's going to quit, and he's going to win via DQ.
Good call. I don't think I've ever heard someone predict a disqualification ever in the history of my podcast or any other podcast. That is definitely a first, maybe.
Is there like a separate prop on a win by DQ, or is it just put with KO, TKO / DQ?
Yeah, it's Kevin Casey inside the distance. Isn't that hilarious? Even though he's the one getting finished inside the distance.
Yeah, that's actually kind of ridiculous to say the. Yeah, that is ridiculous. But yeah, I'm not really sure who wins this one. I definitely lean Rafael Natal. I think, and I should mention, I'm not like a Kevin Casey hater by no means. I actually like Kevin Casey. I'm higher on him than most people. But I think his rise of the middleweight division has come to an end. The king will no longer be the king. It is King Rafael Natal from Saturday night on. Realistically, Rafael Natal should just grind out a decision here. I like him to do just that, grind out a decision. 30-27, maybe 29-20 at the worst. But I do like the Brazilian to get the job done. All right, moving on, a very interesting lightweight matchup between Olivier Aubin Mercier and Carlos Diego Ferreira. Daniel, you're going with the Brazilian here, a fairly sizable underdog. Why are you picking Carlos Diego Ferreira?
I'm picking Carlos Diego Ferreira because Olivier Aubin Mercier likes to take dudes to the ground. And the last guy you want to take to the ground is third-degree black belt Carlos Diego Ferreira. And on the feet, you know, Olivier Aubin Mercier, he does have a really good kick, but I mean, that's about the extent of it. His stand-up is pretty damn rudimentary. And Carlos comes to bang, man. He comes to fight. So I got Diego in this one for sure. And, man, plus 245, it doesn't get any better than that.
Paulo, do you like our fellow Canadian? We have gone 0-1, I believe, on Canadians so far. Do you like OAM to get the job done, or will the Brazilian upset the rising Canadian prospect?
You know, if I could go back, take it a little bit back to yesterday for half the battle, I should have just picked Ferreira more emphatically instead of like tippy-toeing between the two of them. But you know, I think what's going to happen here is that Ferreira is going to touch, or rather hit OAM in the chin. He's going to go down and he's going to choke him, because if it's anything about Ferreira, is that this guy has some nasty chokes. You wouldn't want your neck anywhere close to this guy because he's going to rip that thing off. And, you know, the thing about Aubin Mercier is I don't want to say he's got a bad chin, because it doesn't look like he's been punched in the face throughout most of his career. But maybe he just doesn't know how to take a punch as much as, you know, other guys who are better used to it. So maybe he gets grazed or gets touched, and then he just reacts suddenly and just, you know, drops to the ground. Maybe he shoots for an ill-advised takedown, gets guillotined, or gets put in a bulldog choke or something. So, man, and the thing is, Ferreira, like, plus, what is he right now? Plus 235, plus 240? That's money right there, man. You could get a bet that just for that number. But, you know, I got him to win as well.
I'm going to go with Olivier Aubin Mercier here, not because I'm a Canadian. Maybe partly.
No, Nick, I gotta ask something. Why do Canadians always have to say it's not because I'm Canadian, but I'm picking the Canadian?
because
we're nice like that.
If I don't say that, everyone will think the only reason I'm picking him, and if I pick Matt Dwyer, it's because I'm Canadian. But that's definitely not the case. Carlos Diego Ferreira, I liked him before his last two losses, but I can't forget that Poirier and Benny Dariush. OAM is a major step down in competition than Poirier and Beneil Dariush.
Really?
With yeah, with that being said, I do like Olivier Aubin-Mercier here. I'm gonna kill myself if well no I won't.
No,
Just kidding. No
Nick, bad timing. It's Bell. Let's talk right now, Nick. Bad timing on that.
Carlos Diego Ferreira. If he wins, I'll be a little upset because I haven't been overly impressed with Olivier Aubin-Mercier. Um, Ever since he made his debut, I was thinking this guy, he could be okay in the future. He's not the best right now, and by no means is he ever the next GSP. People called him the next GSP, and I'm Canadian, but I don't care. He is not the next GSP.
Well, Philip Nover was supposedly the next GSP, wasn't he? Remember that?
Yeah.
Uriah Hall, the next Anderson Silva.
And he did not turn out the next Anderson Silva. So yeah, OAM,
only against Gegard Mousasi he did.
That's only one shot, one chance for him to land that kick. But OAM, I'm picking him to win this fight to grind out a decision, but I will be a little worried when he takes him down, when he takes Carlos down, and Carlos locks up some submission or whatever. He's the better grappler by far, but I do like the Canadian here very slightly, but the odds are way off in this matchup. All right, moving on, a very interesting welterweight matchup between the return of Tarek Saffiedine and Jake the Juggernaut Ellenberger. Paolo, who do you like in this matchup?
Well, first off, I'm surprised and a little bit happy actually that this matchup's finally happening. Just because if someone gets injured and it falls off, the UFC might try to book it again. So I'm like, okay, thank God they're finally gonna fight. Get this matchup out of the way. I mean, man, a lot has changed before this matchup first got booked. Because when it first got booked, I think Ellenberger and Saffiedine were both still winning, and now they're both like losing. I mean, both are coming off of knockout losses, so it's kind of hard to like gauge where their heads at right now. But if it's one thing that's easier to gauge is that Jake Ellenberger is, I don't know, man. I mean, I said in half the battle that he had an interview and he said that he's trying to like mentally separate the Juggernaut from Jake Ellenberger. What that's telling me right now is that that explosive fighter that was knocking out guys like Jake Shields and Nate Marquardt is so far from where he is now that he has to sort of like try to get himself back into that level. And for that reason, I think Tarek Saffiedine's gonna 30-27 him, maybe even knock him out, but I don't see it because Saffiedine, like, he doesn't go for this big risk. He's like, he's a very safe point fighter like that. I mean, as brutal as that is to say, but Tarek Saffiedine, easy.
Daniel, are you going with Tarek Saffiedine here? Do you think he gets the job done by decision, inside the distance, or do you like Jake Ellenberger for the upset?
Could you imagine if a guy like Matt Brown was saying stuff like, I need to get back to being the immortal? It would never happen. So, I mean, the fact that he's saying stuff like that, it's not that good. But, I mean, at the same token, I don't know where Tarek's head's at either, but I think Tarek's got the better skills. So, therefore, I'm going to pick him in this fight.
And Tarek, he's moving up to a TriStar in this one. And I think it was James on your show, actually, last night that brought up Tarek must have suffered like the worst beating, and he just figured might as well move up and train with the guy that knocked me out. But I do think that's a good move for him, moving up to TriStar, training with likes of Roy McDonald and all of those killers, of course. Jake Ellenberger, he just moved to King's MMA, correct?
Yeah, I mean, he trained there before, and then he went to go work with Edmund.
Right,
now he's back at King's MMA.
Where that is a good move, of course. You can't you can't get worse than training at Edmonds, of course. But at this point in Ellenberger's career, I like him a lot. But King's MMA, it doesn't matter. He's just not there anymore. His chin isn't good anymore. Just all around, he's declining fast. Tarek Saffiedine has been out of action for such a long time, since October 2014. But Will that matter? I'm not really sure. We could see some cage rust. We won't though. It's really tough to call. I can't base my pick off of that. But overall, I do like Tarek Safdie here. I do think he gets the job done inside the distance. I really think Safdie starches him inside the distance, first round knockout. I'm pretty confident in that. Yeah, that's my pick, Tarek Safdie by first round knockout. All right, moving on. Opening fight on the 4-fight main card, Sage Northcutt taking on Bryan Barberena. Daniel, who do you like?
I like Super Sage Northcutt here. So what's going to happen is, first of all, Bryan Barberena, he's a very tough and durable dude, and he was going to go up to fight Jonathan Webb, who's another prospect you got to watch out for. But Sage Northcutt, he's very talented, and I think what's going to happen is he's going to beat Bryan Barberena, and then he's going to fight James Vick, and that's going to be his first roadblock. So he's going to get the victory this weekend.
Really? I know you're good friends with James, of course. Was he telling you, or like, is that something in the works, or is that kind of just something you're hoping for?
No, that's not in the works. That's we're here on Before the Battle to give predictions. So I'm here on Before the Battle giving my prediction.
Fair enough. All right, Paolo, who do you
Good
like,
point.
Super Sage Northcutt or Bryan Barberena?
You know what? Logically, I'm obviously going to pick Sage Northcutt. I think he's just a bad matchup for Bryan Barberena. I know they're fighting at a higher weight class, and Barberena doesn't have to cut all that weight down. That means he's going to be stronger, he's going to be fresher, and he's not going to have as much cardio issues. But I mean, this guy is a brawler, man. This guy likes to eat like 3 or 4 punches to give one, and I mean that's a bad idea against Sage Northcutt, who's the more skilled fighter, who's more athletic and stuff like that. But I mean, I'm hoping Barberena pulls this off, man, because he does have a legit chance to win this, especially if he takes Sage past the second round and maybe grinds him down in the third. I mean, who knows with these judges, right? But gotta pick Sage.
I'm going with Bryan Barberena. I like him to pull off the upset, and I actually really disagree with you that it's a good matchup for Northcutt. I really think it's a bad matchup for Sage Northcutt, and the reason I say that is Bryan Barberena, he is a brawler on the feet, but he can also grind guys out. And Sage Northcutt, he got taken down by Cody Pfister very easily. The first round, most of it was spent off his back without Sage really knowing what to do. Of course, he ended up getting the stoppage in the second round, basically because he was more athletic than Pfister and just bigger and stronger. And of course, Cody, maybe his gas tank wasn't the best in that fight. But Bryan Barberena all around is a better fighter than Cody Pfister. He will not gas in the second round. I think he can hold Sage down. I don't think Northcutt will be able to get back up. Northcutt can improve his defense on the ground and wrestling defense in a month and a half. That's all he has to train for this fight. He last fought midway through December. It's going to be interesting to see this fight at welterweight. Sage did have a fight, like James Lynch pointed out on your show yesterday. He did actually have a fight at welterweight, which I didn't know before then. So that's interesting. Bryan Barberena moving up to welterweight. I think this is his first time, but I'm not sure. He may have fought at 170 on the local circuit. But I do like Bryan Barberena here. Nothing would shock me because it is Super Sage Northcutt. He could get the finish, no doubt. But I do like Bryan Barberena here to grind out a decision and just really kind of expose Sage Northcutt and kind of just show that he's maybe too inexperienced on the ground. He can beat a lower level competition by knocking them out, by submitting them or whatever. But Bryan Barberena, as crazy as this may sound to some people, he is a step up from Trevino and Pfister, and I think that'll show on Saturday night. All right, moving on, we have a very interesting bantamweight matchup between Yuri Alcantara and Jimmy Rivera. Daniel, who do you like in this matchup?
Well, first of all, if Sage Northcutt was listening right now, he'd probably be like, Nick, or he'd actually be like, Mr. Baldwin, you're the man. Like, you know what I mean? Thumbs up. But
Sir.
Mr. Baldwin, so Jimmy Rivera and Yuri Alcantara, man, this is a hell of a fight. I mean, obviously, Yuri Alcantara, he's the kind of guy you don't want to go toe-to-toe with because he's going to knock you out. And if you take him to the ground, you better neutralize him, because if you don't, he's going to sweep you or he's going to submit you. So Jimmy Rivera's got to be careful here. But when you talk about Jimmy Rivera, you talk about a winner. He's 18-1. One doesn't simply go 18-1 in pro MMA. And, I mean, this guy's going to find a way to win. The current line is a little bit, it's that dreaded -170 that I like to talk about. I don't like to play that line, so I'm passing. Good luck to everyone playing Alcantara. But I got to go with Jimmy Rivera here for the victory.
Paulo, do you like Jimmy Rivera here, the slight favorite in this one, or do you like Yuri Alcantara, the 15th ranked bantamweight?
I like Jimmy Rivera here. I mean, lately this guy's starting to become like a striker. So a lot of the newer fans, or rather the UFC fans who just started watching him, think that, oh, this guy likes to throw down, likes to brawl. But the thing is, with Jimmy Rivera, this guy's a grappler, man. He's got some pretty good wrestling, and I think, and Frankie Sands showed the blueprint of how you beat Yuri Alcantara, man. You better put him on the ground and you neutralize him, and you keep him there, and he's gonna give up, man. He's not gonna do much. You're just gonna keep. He's gonna tire himself out getting up all the time. Jimmy Rivera's gonna take him down, and then eventually he's just gonna like stop and not do much. But I mean, if Rivera tries to throw down with him, he could get knocked out, because Yuri Alcantara, this guy has legit one-punch knockout power that's rare for the bantamweight division. But I gotta give it to Rivera here, just because I think he has a more bigger window of winning the fight.
No, Alcantara, it's a slow decline, but I do think he is declining. He's not the same fighter that even just a few years ago, he was a lot different than he is now. I do think that Frankie Sands' loss opened up a lot of eyes to show maybe this guy really isn't a top 5 guy, a top 10 guy. Jimmy Rivera is on the he's on the rise. He's 18-1. He is, when I think of bantamweight prospects, I think of guys like Rob Font, Cody Garbrandt, and Jimmy Rivera. Those are the 3 that come to mind. I'm sure there's a few others that definitely come to mind as well. I probably am missing them, but Jimmy Rivera is a big bantamweight prospect. He'll do big things in the division. Is he the best bantamweight right now? No, but I do think he's better all around than Yuri Alcantara. He can grind him out, and I do think he can stand with him. I think he can win this fight really however he wants. I suspect the fight will play out basically everywhere, a bit on the ground, a bit on the feet. No matter what, though, I do like him to win by decision. All right, moving on. The co-main event of the evening is a pivotal heavyweight matchup between Josh Barnett and Big Ben Rothwell. Now, Paulo, Big Ben, you pick him every time. You say, maybe stylistically, maybe skill-wise he shouldn't win, but you pick him, you're always right. Are you picking him against the War Master?
Yeah, you know what? Knowing me, I have to be biased towards Ben Rothwell. I mean, come on. I mean, and I think he Overeem was the better striker than Ben Rothwell. Than what's his name? Man, I'm having like a blackout. Josh Barnett. Think it's someone else. Yeah, no, Overeem's a better striker than Josh Barnett, and freaking Ben Rothwell caught him. So what I think is going to happen is that Josh Barnett is going to outstrike Ben Rothwell for maybe the first 1.5 round, maybe for the most of round 1, most of round 2. And then Ben Rothwell's just going to catch him eventually and put him out. And Ben Rothwell, all the way, man.
Now, Daniel, do you like Big Ben Rothwell here or Josh Barnett?
It's interesting because I do think Josh Barnett is more skilled in every area, but sometimes that doesn't really matter. Sometimes it comes down to who's the hungrier guy. And I do think Ben Rothwell is the hungrier guy. So he's going to find a way to win here. It might not be pretty. It might not be a domination, but he'll find a way to win this fight. So I got Ben Rothwell here.
Yeah, I don't pick Ben Rothwell too many times. I don't think I've ever picked him, but this will be the first time I do. I like Big Ben here, and I 100% agree with Daniel. Josh Barnett is probably the more skilled guy in every area of mixed martial arts against Ben Rothwell. But like you said, it can come down to who's the fresher guy, who's the younger guy, who wants it more, who's on the rise, who's on the decline. Josh Barnett, he looked good against Roy Nelson, but I do believe at his age he is declining. Ben Rothwell, however, he is getting better each and every day. He knocked out Overeem. He submitted Matt Mitrione. This guy has been doing really well, and I think his success will continue up until he faces like a really top guy. Ben Rothwell here, I like him. Maybe by knockout, and as crazy as this may sound, a decision would not surprise me. All right, moving on. The main event of the evening. Will Ryan Bader survive the first round? Anthony Rumble Johnson versus Ryan Bader. #1 light heavyweight contenders matchup. Daniel, will Ryan Bader survive the first round?
Man, I like it, Nick. I like it. That's the big question. You know, not only will he survive the first round, but if he does survive the first round, will he survive the next 2 minutes in the second round? You know what I mean? And, man, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out because up until this point, Ryan Bader has faltered when it's been that big opportunity. But that doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to falter here. Or it could. You know, we'll have to see what happens on Fight Night. But I'm a firm believer that if you work hard and you believe in yourself, you can get better and you can accomplish anything. So if Bader goes out there and gets this upset, I'm not going to be that surprised because we have seen Anthony Rumble Johnson, you know, kind of look for the door a little bit in fights. And I mean, that fight against Koscheck back in the day, you know, I thought that since he moved up to 205 pounds, you know, he got his stuff together. And then we see him against DC, and, you know, he drops him. And then I guess the fact that he dropped him so early might have threw him off because after that he threw technique out the window. You know, then the second round he's shooting for sloppy takedowns. Then the third round his corner's pleading for him not to quit. So it's one of those things where it comes down to that first question that you asked me, will Bader survive the first 5 minutes? And I got to know, Nick and Paolo, will he survive the first 5 minutes?
Paolo, you go first.
Man, that's tough to say because every time, usually when Ryan Bader goes up against like a power puncher outside OSB, he gets knocked out. I mean, I think the last time that happened was when he went up against Teixeira and he got caught and he just went down. But that might have been more because he didn't expect it because he had Teixeira backed up against the cage and it was lighting him up and Teixeira just like wings one and catches him and he goes down. And with Leon Machida, he ran straight into Machida's punch, so that would knock most people out. With Rumble, that's what he's going to be expecting, man. He's going to be like, oh, man, just got to worry about the big right, or whatever Rumble's going to be throwing at him. So who knows? I mean, Phil Davis' chin is on another level, so I don't want to give the whole Phil Davis example that Rumble threw everything at him and couldn't knock him out because Phil Davis kept dancing, kept basically just walking around him. I mean, even if Bader survives the first round, he could still lose the fight. I mean, what if he eats like a couple of good punches from Rumble and he's never the same after that and he basically just like circles around the whole time and doesn't want to do anything and just like attempts sloppy takedowns and doesn't get it. I mean, that's another possible scenario outside of just getting knocked out in the first. But with all that said, I think Rumble's gonna get the job done. I think he's gonna eventually catch Bader. Maybe let's make it a second round. I think the first might be a little bit boring, where they're going to be staring at each other. Rumble doesn't want to get taken down. Bader doesn't want to like commit and get knocked out. So it might get a little bit boring in the first. Then after a while, it's going to heat up, and who knows what's going to happen. And then the second round, Rumble's going to catch Bader. I mean, Ryan, who knows, man? Let's go with Rumble here.
I like Rumble Johnson here as well. As we all have said, the big question, will Ryan Bader survive 5 minutes of Anthony Johnson chasing you down like a freaking monster with it? I don't think so. I really do think Rumble will catch him quick enough to end it within 5 minutes. And the thing is, he can still knock out Ryan Bader in the second and the third round. Maybe not the third. I wouldn't be super confident in Rumble in his cardio and power in the not his power, but his cardio for sure in the third. But I will say I'm not as down on his cardio as some people. Can he go 5 minutes like Cain Velasquez, or I guess I should say C-level Cain, that is? No, definitely not. But he can go 3 fairly hard rounds without gasping for air on the canvas afterwards. I'm not saying he would look like the Rumble Johnson in the first minute, in the 14th or 15th minute, but he can go 3 rounds or even longer. Ryan Bader, he definitely can win this fight. I see a clear path to victory for him, weather the storm of Rumble Johnson and grind him out, whether that be a decision or a late submission like Daniel Cormier. I don't think Ryan Bader is the type of wrestler though that DC is. I wouldn't be shocked if Ryan Bader can get him up against the fence, but I really don't see him grinding Rumble Johnson out. Um, it is a possibility, but I think more possible. I think the better option, if you're gonna bet this fight or just pick sides, go Anthony Rumble Johnson by knockout. I really do think he'll test Ryan Bader's chin early. Maybe knock him out with the first or second punch. I'm not sure. Maybe he'll test it. Maybe he'll wobble him and follow up some ground and pound. I'm not really sure, but I do like Anthony Rumble Johnson by knockout here. That would be unbelievable if Ryan Bader knocked out a Rumble in the first round. That would be crazy, but
Man,
yeah,
he's got heavy hands. But
he does. Isn't he riding like a five decision streak right now though?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. I mean, he couldn't finish Anthony Perosh, so there's that, right? I mean,
Oh yeah, he's not knocking out Rumble Johnson. He's not knocking out Rumble Johnson.
Watch
Yeah.
him knock out Rumble Johnson.
He is not going to knock out Rumble Johnson, and if he does, then whatever. We all called Ronda Rousey over Holly Holm. It'll just be that situation.
then you
No
gotta interview
big deal.
Bader and be like, I insisted that you would knock out Rumble Johnson. That's the first
Yes,
thing you should
yes.
tell
Then
him.
I have to go interview Ryan Bader and say I picked you by knockout in the first round. Absolutely. But yeah, I do like wrapping things up. I do like Rumble Johnson here by knockout. First round. Will Ryan Bader survive the first 5 minutes of a monster coming towards him, chasing him down against the fence? No, he won't. All right, let's get into our counter move teams before we wrap up the show. Daniel, if you have your team ready, who are your 5 fighters on your counter move team?
Well, I'm getting it ready as we speak, but I will tell the listeners right here, right now, on before the battle, that the only bet I'm making on this card is Carlos Diego Ferreira. I'm taking a shot on that
Really?
dog. And as of right now, I mean, I'm going to check out the weigh-ins. Let's see how these guys look. Let's see, what the deal is. But as of right now, that's all I'm doing. As I'm making this counter move team, I got Carlos Diego Ferreira. I got Ben Rothwell. I got Jimmy Rivera. I got Dustin Ortiz. And then I got 5,500 left. So what I'm going to do with the final amount is I'm going to put Levan Mahashvili, and I got 200 left, but it's all good. I filled out that five-person roster, so there we go.
Absolutely. Now, Paulo, if you have your team up, who are your 5 fighters on your counter move team?
So my team's not that different from Daniel's. I actually got Ben Rothwell, Levan Makashvili, and Carlos Diego Ferreira. And then I got the King, Kevin Casey, and Randy Brown. So I don't know how many points you get if Kevin Casey gets disqualified and he wins in the first. So I don't know. I don't know how many points he's gonna get that way, but gotta put him in there because if anyone's getting knocked out, I think it's him knocking out Natal.
That you'll probably end up getting 100 points for that. You'll probably get 100 on the dot for a DQ win inside the distance, as the sports books say, but which is kind of ridiculous. But anyways, my counter move team is Anthony Rumble Johnson to KO Ryan Bader in round number 1. I got Tarek Safdie to KO Jake Ellenberger in round number 1. I got Ben Rothwell to TKO Josh Barnett midway through the fight in round number 2. I got Tony Martin, who we didn't talk about, to submit or knock out, honestly. I had him on my show, and he's really confident in his stand-up game now, so that'll be interesting. I do think he finishes his opponent Felipe Olivieri, though. And I got Brian Barberina to grind out Stage Northcutt, Stupid Stage Northcutt. Will be interesting, though. I'm not confident in that one, but I shouldn't be. He's the underdog for a reason, but those are my 5 fighters on my team. Daniel, Paula, want to thank you guys so much, as always, for coming on, for doing the show each and every week with me. Daniel, where can you find you on social media, and what you got coming up with your bets and everything like that?
You can follow me at Best Fight Picks. You can go to bestfightpicks.com if you want to tail the bets. But if you want to check out my podcast, Half the Battle, subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube, going in depth with the most exciting fighters in the game. Got Matt Brown coming up. We had a very good hour-long conversation. He's a very cool dude. Got Paul Felder, obviously the latest episode with Darren Till and Carlos Diego. I mean, just so many exciting fighters. So I can't wait for you guys to check it out. Half the Battle.
Absolutely. Now, Paulo, where can we find you on social media, your writing, your podcast, anything else you got coming up? Go ahead.
Yeah, you can find me on social media at GoPaoloMMA, like it says down there. You can find my writing at Today's Knockout, at Sportsnet. I got a couple of articles cooking up in the oven. They're actually bunching up right now, so I got to finish them all out and just put them out there. And recently released a podcast with Emma Chalans from Australia, MMA at MMA Side Dish. So come check us out, man. We're going into our 8th episode. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a storm over in Australia, and they lost power, so we couldn't really record the 8th episode. But we already got the interviews out. I'm telling you right now, I got the interview with Randy Brown and Rob Font coming up, and that'll be released at some time soon this week before the fights for sure.
Absolutely. Now, before we end the show and I tell you guys where to find me, everything like that, let's do the thing where if Super Sage Northcutt loses, we have to call everyone we talk to next week Sir. You have to refer to them as Sir every single time. We absolutely have to. Deal? Deal. All right, you can find me on Twitter.
Yes, sir.
You can find. He hasn't lost yet, Paul. He hasn't lost yet. You can find me on Twitter at NickUFC. Check out my website where I do some writing, MMAJunior.co. Follow that on Twitter at MMAJunior written out _. My other writing can be found at bloodyelbow.com and MMAsucker.com, but mostly Bloody Elbow. Check out my other podcasts I hosted with Andrew the Clown Kid Lawrence each and every week. MMA Junior Radio drops each and every Wednesday. Check it out. This past week we had 4 guests on the show. We had Brian Barberina, we had Tony Martin, this weekend, and we got 2 local guys who are fighting with other Prestige FC 2. On March 12th, we have Mariusz Shonskiewicz, and we got Micah Brakefield, who fights out of BC. 4 great interviews, and then we, of course, answer listener questions, or as we have recently termed them and called them, dumb questions. So if you have any questions, submit them to us. We will answer them. No matter how dumb they are, we will answer them. With that, you can, everything like I said, my writing, Twitter, my website, everything like that. Thanks to you guys for coming on. As always, enjoy the fights.